Wakili, habari ya leo?
Nzuri sana.
Karibu sana, nashukuru.
Thank you, Hilary, and thank you for really, Abdi. Thank you for this very informative space. And
Yes.
to also thank Jimmy Wanjigi. Let me use both names so that he doesn't come with guns blazing for calling him just one name. I have been listening for a long time. Yes, but very, very quickly, because there are many things that one could say. But, from his exposition, I have understood this concept of onerous odious debt, which has siphoned a lot of money from our country over time. But I think also the point that Bonnie was making, that even the money that we have, which we can use legitimately, that money also is misused, and so one has to look at both aspects. And indeed, what the information that Jimmy has, the information that Bonnie has, and I think somebody else did say that they can be brought together. And if other people have information on these economic issues, so that there is a blueprint which helps people to really understand the whole that we are involved in. And I also understood from Jimmy's explanation, Wanjigi, that development is not possible. There is no money for development. So when we are told that there's going to be development and this area will be developed and so on and so forth, that is a mirage. And I think that came out very clearly. There is a question that Honorable Wanjigi didn't answer, the one of employment of young people. And that is why I think, even as you say now that 2027, it is the economy stupid. But you have to link it with the Gen Z, with the disempowerment of young people, because they came out and they need to be to still be in the space so that they can be a big force. So their disempowerment, this 70% of the population, I think that will be an important aspect also to do. And then maybe one of the most critical questions that I want to ask Mr. Wanjigi: has any country refused to lend us because they realized that there wasn't a legal framework for lending? Because these countries which lend have got very astute lawyers. So those lawyers also advise them that the legal framework, whether it is the constitution, whether it is the PFMA Act, that the country, there's some borrowing which is illegal, because if these countries are, they're good enough, the people who lend to us, then their own lawyers would be able to tell them that. And as I draw to a conclusion, does Jimmy Wanjigi anticipate that even for some of those debts which are not proper, when we are saying that we can't pay them, the banks and whoever it is who is lending us from those countries can go to their governments and say that this money went to the country, and it's up to that country to pay, and therefore there is pressure? And how do we deal with that kind of pressure? And finally, I think we are not looking for one leader or two leaders. And I think Booker made this point, that you need to have, democratic forces coming together. And this is one of the difficult things that is happening, because, many people are doing things silo. And as a result, it's going to be difficult to kind of get to where perhaps the country, should go to 2027 or earlier, if people continue like 1992. And Jimmy Wanjigi did talk about that, 1922 and 1997. And then finally, very finally, Jimmy has said that in Wanjigi, in 2017, he helped Raila with NASA Hour. I want to ask him, do you still have a relationship with the former prime minister? And if he was not to get the AU job, and I think, I'm not saying that he shouldn't, do you think that you could work with him going forward? I learned.
Thank you.
Hillary,
Yes, yes.
Please allow me to respond
That's one that.
to Governor Kibwana. You know, he's a senior man.
Yes.
Maybe we don't just mix his questions, if you don't mind. I
Yes,
like
yes.
to.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
He's asked some very good questions. The first one he asked is about employment. Now, supply side economics, for example, means this: that I want you to imagine a government that is not borrowing domestically. So, if and I have the method under which banks will be capitalized, have to capitalize themselves to this money that they have loaned us that we can't account for. If these banks have got money that the government is not taking, so if they have their 5 trillion back in their pockets, they are forced by their shareholders to loan because that's how they make money. So they'll be forced to come out to each and every one of us, like it was it happened during the Kibaki period, where you create loans. I want you to imagine borrowing at 5%. So Mama Mboga can go and take 1 million shillings and pay back 50,000 per year. That is better than any hustler fund. There'll be awash with money that young people will drive something called self-employment and what I like to call the entrepreneurial state. In other words, we are going to be pushing entrepreneurs, not people just job seeking. Entrepreneurs, because we have got territory we need to conquer beyond our land. I'm just giving you one example. And that's the freedom that this debt burden, removing it, does for us as a nation. You create that wealth comes back to us to deploy as banks should be doing into the private sector. It came from them anyway. Send it back there. It means, for example, that 200 billion to redo an airport can be raised as venture capital. In domestic debt, 800 billion is pensioners' money. 700 billion is insurance companies. You and I as businessmen can go to an insurance companies and say, we need 200 billion. We have formed a consortium that can go and revamp the airport, right? And we need your venture capital at a price of 3% because the banks are giving us at 5%. And you'll find that they become shareholders in an enterprise such as that, that ends up being owned by Kenyans, not by others. This is what happens when you free up capital. You then capitalize the nation to become an entrepreneurial state. And you do so if you remove this burden that is there in the coffers of government. That is how great this thing is. That is our emancipation. I hope I've answered that. It's just but one example before you start getting into how you can direct credit towards very many things.
Thank
Number
you.
two,
Yes.
number two, number
Yes.
two, because he talked categorically about illegal borrowing and the consequences of stopping the illegal borrowing. Now, the questionable debt is not coming from countries. It is coming from private banks. For example, our audit of what you call the London Club debt, these are the Euro bonds and syndicated loans, have no basis in law. They did not come, any of them, that we could find other than the first Eurobond where $350 million came into consolidated fund. The rest did not come to consolidated fund. We don't know what they funded. So, for example, I was asked that question not too long ago by a foreign party. What do you do if JP Morgan Chase says they are going to arm twist the American government? I would ask the American government to immediately, because it's not JP Morgan's money. They collected it from people, right? They sought people's investment in this bond and they sought it on a prospectus. That prospectus talked about development projects. And that prospectus in development shows development projects. Those development projects, JP Morgan Chase should have themselves analyzed our laws and seen how their money is anchored in our budget according to our laws. They received money under false pretense. That is an investigation into JP Morgan Chase. The SEC should be investigating them. That's the basis of an SEC investigation into Adani. He raised money under false pretenses through the stock exchange in America, right, to fund green energy projects in India, okay, where he has bribed parties that have given him certain concessions. That is how serious this matter is. And I can assure you right? Each and every one of them, we will deal with them. Each and every one. We've gone through this. So we are very clear. I agree with you about the complementarity of expenses being done in counties and theft and so on. But Kenya is the kind of place where if the boss is not stealing, others don't steal. People are afraid. Things here are top down. If the head of state is not stealing, is not participating in that malfeasance, even a governor will not do it. They'll be afraid. The system changes. I remember a time when people used to ask what has happened in the treasury when Kibaki came in. And they said, but these are the same officials. I remember a World Bank fellow asking that question. And Merari aptly answered him and said, yes, we're the same. Some of these are the same officials, but the top has changed. And sure enough, things changed. So we have a chance of dealing with that. When you talk about forces coming together, Governor, which forces? Which forces? If we are coming together to deal with this economic issue and we have the same template of agreement, I agree with you. Tick, tick, tick. We can come together and let us say we are all saying that we will cut off, right, on day one, this odious debt. We will not pay it. Yes, and I tell you, there are not very many people who come there. But if we are just grandstanding on the basis that the problem is only Ruto, once we get rid of Ruto, we are solving the problem, then no. Ruto is a big part of this problem. He must go, and he's going. He's going to go. That there's no doubt. But we must be clear that we have to deal on day one with this problem. I have bothered to understand what this problem is. Have others understood it? Are they prepared, right, to come and join this direction where we are saying we are going to cut off odious debt, which is a pain to Kenyans, that is a theft on Kenyans? Or are they going to be bought? Are they going to be compromised? Have they been part of it? Are they going to be talked to? Are they going to be the forces that refuse the advancement of dealing with it? That is the problem we're having. I remember when there was the issue of the MOU between LDP and Kibaki's government. And a list of names was given. A list of names that was brought to Kibaki by the LDP side. Raila, Modi Awori, George Saitoti. I was present when that list was given. And Kibaki's main reason for dropping some names, in other words, removing Kamodo, who came from LDP side, and putting Michuki, for example, right, was that are these not the same people who've created the problems we have in Kenya? Are they going to be gatekeepers of the previous regime because they are in it? Or are they going to allow emancipation? I take somebody from Maranga, but I take Michuki. I will not allow Ntimama because they may end up stopping our programs because of the things that they had done in the past. So I take another man called, I think it was called Papai, from Kajiado South. The issues were his agenda had to be fulfilled for the people of Kenya. He had made promises. And if you bring parties that are going to stop it, that will become a problem. It's the same here. You can sit down with everybody and say, okay, the problem is Ruto tomorrow. We remove him. In fact, today, the problem is Ruto. We remove him. But Kenyans will be saying, okay, then what? Are you solving our economic problem? And 2 years down the line, we'll be fighting there because there are forces that want this to stick. And this is a lot of money. A lot of people can be influenced, or they have been part of it. Those who do not want to deal with this problem will be there on the table with you. Or do you want those that are prepared to say, this is truly a new period for Kenya, an economic emancipation, and bother to understand what it's about? Most of our, and I say this with all due respect, most of our political leadership understands political rights. They understand freedom of speech, of this, of democracy. Yeah. But nobody is talking about economic freedom, liberation. They don't understand what that means. Governor did a fantastic job in Makueni, right? You taught them what to do with their mangoes. You taught them value addition. That is part of emancipation. Now, the key thing is it should have been propelled beyond a county. Should have gone on beyond any county funding. Should have a program the private sector take on. That is the supply side economics we're talking about. Many people do not understand it, are not in touch with it. They don't click, but they are very good at tumezimwa mdomo. Oh, we have no rights. Oh, he's jailing us. Oh, democracy. Oh, freedom of speech. Those are embedded. But very few people can talk about economic emancipation of a Kenyan. They still want us, in many form or another, beggars to them. They do not want our emancipation because they see it threatens them. So who are these forces you're saying that should come to the table? And lastly, your question about Rao, my good friend Raila Amolo Odinga. He is my friend. He's a friend from a very long time ago. He's my family friend. You can see I have no time for William Ruto, but even when William Ruto raided my home and caused a lot of atrocity, he beat up my children. They broke my home more so viciously, without any decorum. They sent thugs. Raila was one of the first people to come and give comfort to my family. We are family friends. I wish him all the best in any venture that he wants. I wish if he can win AU, good for him. I have no problem. If that's an ambition, in fact, I always say, for the name of Kenya, it's good. If he doesn't get it, sour. Life goes on. But I can tell you, I'll never wish him ill. He is a personal friend. As I know even him, he does not wish me ill. And I wish him all the best. Asante sana.
Asante sana. Mheshimiwa